Well, you almost got treated to scratching post to begin. Hello and good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are. My name is Margaret Pinard. I'm a historical fiction and fantasy author, and you're on Booktube. We have a special program today. So today is May 1st, May Day, International Workers' Day. So globally, it is a celebration of the working class and labor getting some rights, right? I think that's generally agreed to be the feeling of the day. And in honor of that, there is a day of action here in the US, which is solidarity with people who are being oppressed by the current regime in power, let's say. So the goal, the action that is called for today in the US is no working, no shopping, no school. So these are pretty easy for me because I don't work for anyone else. I am not currently going to school, and I do not have to shop if I put my mind to it. I won't fall into putting something in a shopping cart or going to the store if I think about it. So I'm going to engage in those 3 actions today. And as a little boost of community education action, I thought, because of some of the things that I'm consuming at the moment, I thought, what if I tried to ask folks what they would put in an anti-fascism starter kit? So we're going to define some terms as we go along, and then I will be soliciting input into what you would recommend for certain aspects of this starter kit. And hopefully we'll end up with something more than what I came with and greater than the sum of our parts so that we can all participate. So welcome, everybody, and happy May 1st. It is also Bealtaine, flower moon, full moon day, so very exciting. And I'll just say hello to the chat because we had some folks saying hello. Ven was on his way home. I can't believe he phrased it escaped from Waterstones, because that would not be what I would call it. The bookstore in Manchester. Nice to have you, Ven. Julia's here. She said, everybody relax. I'm here. And it does give me more relaxing vibes. She says, what I used to say when I came home from work, which I thought was really funny. Richard is here. Hello, hello. I was just thinking about you, Richard. I hope you got a round of applause. Julie says, no, actually, the responses varied from a mom to, geez, Julie, which made me laugh. And then Greg was here, Ghost Readers in the Sky, to say, geez, Julie. So we're having some fun in the comments and making each other laugh, which is great. I did put in a question of the day, which is sort of a meditation on the topic of worker solidarity and fascism and anti-fascism topics. So have you ever consciously tried to be less reactive and more causative? How did it go? Have you thought about this? Have you tried this? Is this a thing that you've heard people talk about? Mike chimed in saying, I'm early for once. Hello all from Riff Raff Reads. Lovely to have you here. Ven says, I may have walked away with 6 books. My daughter has 5 and my youngest 1. Well, you didn't get them for yourself, so they don't count. Richard says, does the starter kit go in a briefcase, satchel, backpack? Well, the emoji I used for the title was a little tool case. So toolkit, starter kit, that's the vibe I'm going for. They're a little heavier to tote, but usually they can live in the closet and come out when needed. All right. But Ven is on the bus, so he says, have fun. Yeah, Day of Action does not exist in the UK. Exactly, which is why I said in America. So the International Workers' Day is, of course, international, but the Day of Action is, as I said, an American thing. And it's this year. It's a as the situation calls for it kind of thing. So, what do we have here? Labor. Labor is a word that has lots of different meanings, including giving birth to a child, as well as a class of workers. And I was just reflecting on this the other day and thinking the labor that I do. My conception of labor has evolved a lot in my lifetime. And I'm at a point now where I am really focusing on labors of love, if you will. That's a phrase that many people use to say that It's not something for profit. It's not something for reputation. It's a labor that we undertake because we love the person that we are gifting this labor to, right? It's free. It's just the sweat of our brow to do something good in the world, right? A labor of love. And so what I'm thinking this labor is the part of this channel that is dedicated to community education and learning on my own. So doing things on my own to educate myself, as well as offering that journey of education and learning to others to sort of involve them in the process and forge community bonds. So hopefully that is coming across. Things that are falling together at the moment. Okay, so here's what inspired me, because it is May 1st. April's pattern for videos was just whatever I thought of the night before, right? It was very last minute. It was very whatever I could grasp at, right? Things were busy, lots of things going on. And so it wasn't as well planned as my months usually are. So May was going to not be like that. And then I thought, well, May 1st, I want to do something for May 1st. What could it be? What could the topic be? And yesterday, because of current events here in the US involving our Supreme Court, I saw in my inbox an email that was a call to action. Not really action, just absorbing, like participating in a YouTube call, right? And so I listened in 5 p.m. It was an hour and a half call, and it was a bunch of really great speakers, some I'd heard of, some I hadn't, that were talking about the impact of the Supreme Court decision, Calais versus Louisiana, I think is the name of it. But basically, it was a gutting of the Voting Rights Act and a permission from the Supreme Court to gerrymander, right? And deprive some people, Black and brown voters, of their votes being as powerful as other voters. So this is a big deal. We had a lot of important people on the call, and I was listening and absorbing, and there's a lot of energy from these activists. It was really a good call. So I had that in my mind. And then I have this DVD, which I just watched last night. It's a classic film. Katharine Hepburn, Spencer Tracy, the famous duo. It's called Keeper of the Flame. I think it's from 1942. Someone had mentioned this months ago, and it took me months to get it from the library. As you can see, it's a library DVD here. I'm not sure if one person had it or if there were multiple copies and everyone was going out to get it, to watch it, but it took months to become available. And I got it yesterday and watched it last night. So I watched it right away. And most of it is sort of a suspense crime story where Spencer Tracy is a writer trying to get information about someone who has just died, which is her husband, Katharine Hepburn's husband. And he just is more and more suspicious about how he died. And we see that she is more and more secretive, or really secretive from the beginning, about his death and things surrounding his death, right? So it's more of a mystery in that respect. And then the last 10 to 15 minutes is the unraveling of the backstory, which is what has a bearing on politics and the state of the nation at this time. In 1942, we're in the middle of World War II, and this movie is sort of propaganda-like, gave an image of how fascism could come to the US, how you could have a cult of personality around a certain leader, which was her husband, and how that person can be very admirable, hero, and then sort of turn to the dark side and let the demons of his personality take over, basically. And that is the turn to fascism, meaning you don't trust the people to make their own decisions. You want to be a dictator. You have nefarious plans to accomplish this. And so we see a piece of this in this classic movie. And of course, Katharine Hepburn, amazing. So that was on my mind last night. I was turning over that. The other thing I picked up at the library is this graphic novel, which I am reading. It was on my wish list already, but I'm reading because of Mr. B's readathon on Storygraph, organized by a chaotic bibliophile. It's called Seek You, which is a pun, which you find out in the first few pages, A Journey Through American Loneliness by Kristen Radke. And I don't know how many of you have heard of this, but it's a graphic it's not a novel because it's nonfiction, but it's talking about American loneliness, how it's evolved in the past 50, 60 years, how it makes us vulnerable. And you know who she references, not even halfway through? Hannah Arendt. So Hannah Arendt is a writer from the 20th century that wrote extensively on fascism and authoritarianism and freedom and the public mind, this sort of thing. I have not read her. This is a big gaping hole, and there's many gaping holes, but I really want to. So I went and reserved some books from the library. And basically, she talks about isolation and feeling lonely and how that really contributes to people being ripe for fascism and dictatorship. So, see any parallels with today? So that got me thinking. So I've got CQ, I've got Keeper of the Flame, and I've got the Indivisible Call, all different media sort of coming in at me saying, like, make this your May 1st call topic. And so that's what we're going to do. The starter kit is going to have books, it's going to have movies, and it's going to have journalists, because that's the three things that I really felt supported by in this learning journey. So I'm going to put out a call. And if you have books that you think are really great at understanding fascism, advocating anti-fascism, and acting in community to combat those demons and those dictators, drop them in the chat. So here we go. Oh, and there was one final thing that came in the mail that made me think about this. And the Indivisible Call, of course, mentioned this as well. Voting. The voters pamphlet, all right? So mine came in the mail yesterday, 2 days ago, and I've got plenty of reading material. There's probably only a couple things that I can actually vote on because of the way elections are organized. But it's important to vote. It's important to participate. It's important to read up on the issues and be an informed citizen. So that is part of the deal. All right. So let's check in with the chat before we dive in. So there is the link to the Indivisible Call. It's an hour and a half. They had some great speakers. They were short. They were like 10-minute speeches giving details about the Supreme Court, the legal ramifications, and the history of the Voting Rights Act, and the state of the actual case in Louisiana and what is happening now, as well as what we can do in the future to put pressure and make it not be the end of this Voting Rights Act activism. Yeah, the Supreme Court is no longer either supreme nor a court. Let's just call it the U.S. politicized rubber stamp, says Julie. Not wrong. Not wrong. I mean, we do have some justices fighting on the court, but it's outnumbered. Not really where the Supreme Court thing. It is just hot off the presses, Richard. So we've had a lot of Supreme Court decisions that are sort of flying in the face of American jurisprudence. And King Charles actually named, there were 100 some odd of them that the Supreme Court has cited Magna Carta in. So we had a visit from your monarch, and he quoted the Supreme Court. So it was pretty cool. The state visit, which looks like it went very well. Yeah, I tuned in for some clips of that as well. King Charles had jokes. It was pretty exciting, actually. 2 kings in less than a week. Ha, ha, ha. Okay, Greg asks, do you equate authoritarianism with fascism? Not exactly. So I tried to read a book that was very detailed and academic about the difference between fascism, populism, authoritarianism, and I got lost. I was like 60, 80 pages in, and it was just like mud, right? So I gave that back. I ordered it new, and then I just was like, this book is not for me. It was very talking to academics. It was like nitpicking things. And I think what I need and what most people generally need is the idea, the general idea. And I think for the purposes of that, authoritarianism is a system of government where there is one leader who is the source of all power, right? And fascism is a certain brand of that. This is a great opportunity for me to read out the definition of fascism. This is Wikipedia. No, this is American Heritage Dictionary. A system of government marked by centralization of authority under a dictator, a capitalist economy subject to stringent governmental controls, but not in the way we would like in terms of regulation. Violent suppression of the opposition, so there's no democratic voices to be heard and judged, and typically a policy of belligerent nationalism and racism. So that's in most cases where fascism takes hold, there is a policy of belligerent nationalism and racism. And I would say that's because that is the quickest way to get power, is othering people. So you say, we want to isolate the nation, just like we want to isolate the people. And the racism part comes in where you want to group the in-group versus an out-group to get them angry and scared, right? So typical political moves. Yes. Hi, Leslie. Hello. Good morning. Mike says, I've got lots of books to recommend. Hannah Arendt is a must. Yes. Origins of Totalitarianism. There's another one that's like, what's the line with authoritarianism? Is it just a brand? Is it a flavor? I've read Masha Gessen, and their book is less concerned with the nitpickiness, but more about the general idea. So it's kind of what I'm taking my cue from. Key lesson from history. More recently, Anne Applebaum is very readable. Twilight of Democracy. And yes, I know the name, and I was just confusing it with one of my professors, which has a bomb in the name as well. Yeah. Great suggestions. Let's see. Yeah, magnet as a horseshoe. That'll work. All right, so we've got a definition of fascism. Now here's where the question of the day comes in. When I say anti-fascism starter kit, a lot of people will have a knee-jerk reaction because anti-fascism has been portrayed a certain way in the recent press. Now, back in World War II, anti-fascism was in vogue. It was the Allies. It was Britain. It was America. It was Canada. It was Australia. It was the people who were fighting back against the fascists, the Nazis. And so the twisting of the term into what it is seen as now by many people is interesting to observe. What I mean is that some of us who are anti-fascism here, do not want to see a dictator. We do not want to see violent suppression of the opposition. We do not want to see racism and nationalism, all those things that I just talked about in the definition of fascism. And so that's all I mean. So we're reading books, we're watching movies, and we're listening to journalists who are going to help us get to the heart of how fascism can take hold and what we can do to prevent it. Oh, Julie just got How Fascism Works by Jason Stanley. I just got his Erasing History, which is another one of his books. I think it might be after that one. I read that one quite a while ago now, and it's pretty good. And you bought it for Independent Bookstore Day. So double points. I love that. That's great. Mike is giving a useful 14-point fascism checklist. Oh, this is good too. All right, I'm going to star this. Okay, it's a PDF somewhere on the interwebs. I'm not going to click on it now, but I'll definitely check it out later. So what I started with for this starter kit, my local library has a list of books, and we can look it up if you'd like. I don't see anyone responding to the question of the day, but what about this? There's some in the chat who might recognize this more than others. I didn't want to put a swastika on the screen, so I looked up this symbol, which I did not know, and put it on the thumbnail instead, because I didn't want to give too much of a knee-jerk reaction. But does anyone recognize this symbol? I was looking up historical symbols. It's kind of cool looking, right? But it stands for something that was very much not. And then let me get this ready. So share this tab instead. All right. While people contemplate that, it looks like our local energy company. Yeah, it's not it. It does though. It looks like an electric symbol, but Hi, Kat. Thanks for lurking. While you're at work, I assume. Get those hours, spread that info, but my blood pressure needs a break after a week of working with red hats. Oof, yeah. Yeah, Lord's work, Kat. Okay, so let's share. I guess I need to remove this and put this up. This is a list from the library. I'll see if anyone recognizes these titles or authors. So Ralph Nader, a late book by Ralph Nader, Displacing the Corporate State and Building a Country That Works for the People. Sounds good. Blueprint for Revolution, but I don't know this person unless it's the brain pickings website. That might be Popovich. Sounds familiar. The first name does not. But yeah, famous image being used. An encyclopedia for historical revolutions. Lauren Duca, Young People and Revolutions. Fareed Zakaria. I don't really read him. He's too facile these days. American Revolution. The Iranian Revolution. Oh, I didn't check whether this is sharing. Yes, it is. Okay. Social change and the emergence of the modern individual, which is interesting, but a little bit more theoretical. Gender Revolution with Katie Couric. So that's a journalist book. Art is the Permanent Revolution. So that's an interesting viewpoint as well. We got a very short introduction, which was an interesting series. Haven't read too much of. Ijeoma Oluo, their take on Be a Revolution. We've got On Revolution by Hannah Arendt, which is on my request list at the library. Digital Activism, by someone I have not heard of. Let This Radicalize You by Kelly Hayes and Mariam Kaba, which I have definitely seen snippets of. The Age of Revolutions, I think that's historical. If We Burn, which interested me, I looked that one up. The Mass Protest Decade and the Missing Revolution. So why are we missing the step from protests to social change? Enslaved women and their fight for freedom in America, and women's history of the modern world. 19 items. So that's a pretty good list. There's definitely some that I think they could have expanded on, but they have a pretty well-rounded list of revolution and activism. So that's pretty neat. So that's where I'm going to start with for books. How about you guys? Yeah, Julie got it. Okay, so not even a Brit. British Union of Fascists. That's what the blue circle with the white lightning strike means. So if you didn't know, there was in Britain a political party that thought fascism was the way to go. It was led by Sir Oswald Mosley. The Maisie Dobbs series of historical mysteries extend from the end of World War I to the beginning and middle of World War II. And they do actually treat this phenomenon. They have Oswald Mosley and fictitious people in his organization as characters. And she really does a great job of the psychological appeal of such an organization, of the belonging, because people want to belong when they feel lonely and at loose ends. Yeah, so I use that symbol with an X just to like indicate that anti-fascism is what we'll be talking about. Good one. Good answer. So that's one of the book starter kits. I have a list here, ones that I have read that I thought are really great at teasing out politically how we got to where we are and a little bit of like what to do about it. So I will always recommend Dark Money by Jane Meyer. That's a 2016 book that is about how money sort of corrupted politics. We sort of had a handle on it and we're making inroads about equality in politics. And then Citizens United, various other movements and decisions made it so that really people with more money have more voice in politics, which is not as it should be according to democratic ideals. So Dark Money is about how that happened, which was really eye-opening. I've got The Great Disruption by Paul Gilding, which is a 2011 book. This is one of the ones that I was so fascinated by, and I was going to do a standalone review and then did not. But Paul Gilding is an Australian who wrote extensively about climate change and the breakdown of sustainability and how, well, politicians are going to have to do something about it because we're in dire straits. And then nothing happened. That was 2011. So that was 15 years ago. So it's interesting to hear someone who thinks, well, we'll have to come together because there's no other option if we want to survive. And the continuance down that road of impossible unsustainability. But he makes really good points. So they're still all valid. And now there's more points to add. You may have heard me talk about Hospicing Modernity by Machado de Oliveira. That is a 2021 book that is about modernity writ large. So instead of just a democratic society wanting to keep democratic ideals, Machado de Oliveira is talking about modernity as a project over the past 200 years from industrialization to now, and how it has overreached itself, overflowed its riverbanks, really creates havoc and wreaks destitution, destruction in many places, and is heading us off a cliff. And how do we take what we can from modern society and all it's given us and build a new world that we cannot yet envision, but will save something of humanity for us going forward? So that was a really eye-opening read. Of course, Surviving Autocracy by Masha Gessen. That is a journalist who is a defector from Russia who has talked extensively in the past decade about how Russia got where it is now, which is a terrible place, an autocratic place, and how we are going down that road, and there are like red flags left and right on this road, and we're just ignoring them. So that's a 2020 book, and very fast, very quick read, but very good. Similarly, On Tyranny, very small book by Timothy Snyder in 2017, and it's had a couple reissues, more modern forwards or whatever, according to the modern moment. On Tyranny also is a playlist of videos where Tim Snyder reads the lesson for each chapter and then explains in a few minutes what that means and how you fight tyranny. So tyranny, like fascism, I think is a generally understood negative thing. Tyranny is not a political system, but it is a group dynamic, if you will. It means that one person or a small group of people is running roughshod over many other people. A tyrannical handling of something means that you're not asking for input, you are enforcing your will on other people, and it's not very nice. So yeah, On Tyranny. I really thought Beautiful Country Burn Again by Ben Fountain was phenomenal. So he's a journalist who writes fiction as well as nonfiction. This is a nonfiction that had lots of different interviews, lots of historical anecdotes, diving into lesser known movements in history, and really compiling them in a way that makes it very obvious that America goes through these boom and bust cycles of really sort of getting the point and clinging very close to democracy, like the civil rights movement, and sort of just disengaging, detaching, and not paying attention, and letting the people who want the power capture a lot of the power in the system. And so we sort of go back and forth on this pendulum. That's the word I'm looking for. And when he says Beautiful Country Burn Again, he's referencing we're overdue for a very populist revival, if you will, where the larger portion of the population takes back power and is empowered to enact change, legislation, laws, regulation, things like that. So, like that match, metaphorically. I've got How to Kill a City by Moskowitz. That's a 2017 book that is on its face about urban gentrification. It takes a lot of case studies about gentrification, but I feel like that is a microcosm of our more American situation writ large, because we are more and more living in cities, and the economic forces at play are an illustration of how we are letting the corporate and billionaire class capture these gains that we had for so long. So again, the pendulum is swinging. We're allowing it to happen. We need to take action to make it more equal, to make more people have more opportunity. So that's the nonfiction. And there were actually two anti-fascist fiction books I put on this list that I have read and can recommend. Amberlou by Laura Elena Donnelly is a 2018 historical fantasy alternate world where it's kind of like a 1930s Berlin vibe where there's a slide into authoritarian jackboots, black shirts, this kind of attitude where there's a underground society and they're tolerated, but like they're losing their feeling of safety and sliding into this sort of fascist regime. I haven't read the other books in the trilogy. I think it's a trilogy, but this one was really good. It's about an underworld, like kind of like cabaret, like the Berlin 1930s vibe would suggest, and just has got a lot going on. It's got like a mystery plot and like a romance plot, and all against the backdrop of this change in political rights. So that's Amberlou, Amber Lough. That's just how I say it. I'm not sure it's right. But I have had Laura on the channel to discuss. If you want to look up Laura Elena Donnelly for that interview on my channel. And then the other fiction book I would put in is All the Water in the World by Erin Kafal. That is a 2025 fiction book that I loved. It's very intense. It's very thriller-esque. It's a post-apocalyptic society, little group in New York City that's living on top of the Natural History Museum after the big storm has come in and New York City is flooded and everyone is fending for themselves. So it's about trust. It's about survival. It's about how we cobble together a community after we have lost faith in the system, and the system has in fact collapsed. So All the Water in the World by Erin Kafal. Pristine. Really, really good about how we keep going when our institutions have completely failed. So those are my books. Did I put this up? No, I did not. We're going to put it up now in case people want to leave comments with their book recommendations. Let's see. All right, so we left off with Julie's answer. Oh, yeah, I am thinking of Maria Popova. Okay, brain pickings. Yeah, so it's a different person with the same last name. All right, unless she changed her name for this. Because she does a lot of like revolutionary thinking. I don't know. But yeah, good call. That's exactly who I was thinking of. Julie says, sorry, don't know how to answer the question of the day. Reading banned books, maybe. Okay, so I will give my answer to give a little bit of context. When I say reactive and causative, someone just recently said causative in a video, and I think it might have been Angela, it might have been Vina. I can't remember. It was within the last week, and I've already forgot it. But I've definitely heard of people saying, don't be so reactive, and that reactive is a negative thing because you're not really controlling or critically thinking about your reaction. You have an impression or a preconceived notion about something. And when you see it, for example, a swastika, you say, oh God, that's bad. I don't want to listen to that, right? So it's a knee-jerk reaction. Some of them are good for survival. Some of them may need to be considered more, right? So when I use reactivity in this context, I'm kind of talking about Antifa. A lot of people may have knee-jerk reactions to that name or that portrayal by the media today. But I was really interested in the causative piece because when I hear people talk about reactivity before Antifa was a thing, it was often in the context of you don't have control over what people say. You only have control over your reaction, right? And there's an instant between when you perceive something and when you react to it. And there's like word things where people will quibble over, is it reaction? Is it, I can't remember what the other word is, but immune system wise, there's a small amount of time where you have the reaction kick in, with your actual body that you can't control, the autonomous nervous system. And then there's how you act on it. And so a lot of times when you're talking about de-escalation training or conflict mediation or relationship advice, all these different situations, you want to take time to absorb, think about, frame your answer, maybe think about how what you do will come across to the other person and perhaps hurt them. So you want to be more thoughtful in your interactions with other people. So that's been my experience with this term and thinking about it in the past. And then causative made me think, well, yeah, if I'm promoting critical thinking, I want to have more original thoughts. Not that there is really anything original under the sun, but I want to express beliefs that I have critically examined and am more or less sure of, right? So I want to be open to people contributing more and like filling out that picture with me, but I also want to only put out things that I've thought about critically and not just pass on um half-baked theories, conspiracy theories, etc., right? So that's kind of the thing that I was going for. It may not be successful, but yeah. Leslie has her answer. I'm in the baby stages of being less reactive and more causative. Same girl. Over the past couple of years, I've been in listening mode. And as far as the causative portion of the question, I'm trying to communicate with more grace and compassion and approach life with more focus on others rather than self. It's hard. That is a great goal, though. And also think about solutions and contemplate the long-term echoes of my words and actions. I hope that makes sense. Totally. I was just having a conversation with a friend about people who had their dogs off leash in the park and how to respond to that in a way that wasn't being an asshole back to a person being an asshole, but was also not just like taking it and allowing people to degrade the environment when it's something you don't agree with. And so we were having I was just thinking about that, like yeah, you need to think about it, turn it over, but you also need to stand for something. Is my view. Mike says the poor delivery over decades by democratic governments is fueling populism, which opens the door for a only I can fix it fascist leader. Interesting point. So I have read maybe like 1 and 2 halves of a book, so not 3, but I've read a little bit on populism and where sometimes it is really a grassroots movement coming up. Sometimes populism is a manufactured movement that is telling the people to be angry and scared because of something from the top. And so there are these different definitions of populism. That is that academic book that I gave away, the difference between populism and fascism. Because one I think has possibilities for good and one I think does not. But populism of the second type can open the door for only I can fix it, strongman type leader. Exactly. Mike says the book on the above topic, National Populism, The Revolt Against Liberal Democracy by Roger Eatwell and Matthew Goodwin. I think I've heard of this one, but not National Populism. I think I've heard of the authors. Okay, good recommendation. Should I check this out and add it? There we go. Oh, it's got a water blue cover. I like it. All right, so I will share as I go since we're all working and making the starter kit together. Roger Eatwell, Matthew Goodwin. Matthew Goodwin. Why does that sound familiar? Good questions. So nobody I follow has interacted with this book. I've taken to checking this, especially with this category. I was looking up the Hannah Arendt books, and very few people had put them on their story graph. So I was kind of looking to that as a cue if the Booktube community is keyed into this. Okay, so I'll put this in. Riff Raff. There we go. I should just change that to Riff Raff Reads because that is a very long label. But we'll put that in. Okay. Thank you. Let's see. Julie says, I like your answer to Leslie. Julie says, regarding the meaning of the word labor, you touched on this one. My dad was a union member, woohoo, and a shop steward at his factory, and my younger brother was also a union member. An extremely powerful documentary on this topic is Harlan County, USA. Ooh, okay. I'm going to write that down for my not yet viewed movies. I think I've heard of that one too. And I'm betting it's at the library. We'll see. I just tried to get Andor at the library and they only have a Blu-ray version and no one in the whole system has a DVD version to borrow. So I was agog at that news. Leslie says, thanks. I didn't think I was making any sense. Perfect sense, my dear. Yes, definitely. Greg says, his answer, I don't think often about reactive or causative, but I do try and often fail to live with intention. Yeah, that's about the feeling I'm getting at, right? So instead of just what you've been programmed with, what you've been trained to think from childhood and adolescence, you've reflected on those things, you've formed your own opinions, and you continue to digest and pick at things, right? And give them a little test to see if you believe what comes out of your mouth, right? There's a quote from someone that says, don't believe everything you think. It might be Mary Engelbreit. It might be someone else originally, but it's pretty good. Or it might be Karita Kent. Yeah, it might be Karita Kent. Leslie's got a book recommendation, a book that came out in 2017 I really want to read. At this point, I might sneak an audiobook listen while at work. I might have mentioned it before. Hitler in Los Angeles, How Jews Foiled Nazi Plots Against Hollywood and America. Interesting. Okay, so let's look that one up. Hitler in Los Angeles. Here we go, by Stephen J. Ross. 2018 finalist for the Pulitzer Prize. No American city was more important to the Nazis than Los Angeles. Yeah. If you're talking about killing morale, there you go. Okay. Book Skurs and Purrs will be in here with a tag. Excellent. Thank you for that. I'm going to star that as well. The synopsis caught my eye, but it's too long to share in the chat. Oh, yeah. The synopsis I can read. The chilling little-known story of the rise of Nazism in Los Angeles and the Jewish leaders and spies they recruited who stopped it. And it is pretty long, so I'm not going to read it out loud. But hopefully you got it from the screen share. Excellent. So books to read. Those are my recommendations. We've got some fab ones that I just added to my story graph. And if you're watching this on the replay, feel free to pop them down below in the comments. I think that's what I had for books. Let's see. Yeah, and then the library list. There we go. So then next we have movies to watch. And this is a little trickier for me, at least. So I know a lot of people are more movie literate, more movie centric, and this moves into the kind of media literacy topic, maybe. Like I said, most of this movie is a mystery. It's like a crime novel, and then at the very end is the very straight commentary about fascism. But I've looked at several other movies to watch that are about fascism, and I've watched some, but not very many. Keeper of the Flame is one. Casablanca is, of course, another that was originally intended as a propaganda film during World War II. So it's a great movie, but it was really intended to influence people to not support fascism. I've got several lists. The only other one I had watched was American History X, which is like a really disturbing high school watch growing up. And I think a really profound movie to watch if you haven't. When I watched this, there were two other shorts that were from the same time. One is Our Gang, like the Little Rascals, talking about fascism topics, just kind of weird. And then the other one was a cartoon called Wolf Blitz, one of those. And it's like a 10-minute cartoon by the Tex Avery, the guy who did The Big Bad Wolf and the Three Little Pigs. And it's just chock-a-block with references to the war effort. So it's this cartoon that starts out with the Three Little Pigs and the Big Bad Wolf, except the Big Bad Wolf arrives and it's Hitler. He has the mustache, he has the uniform, he has the German accent. And so you're like, oh, okay, this is a war propaganda cartoon. But then you go through and there's like these funny things, but also like just profound war references in a cartoon, which I don't know if we have anymore. Perhaps we do, and I don't find them, but I found it very interesting to watch. So if you can, I don't know, see that on the website, I think it's like a Chinese video website. I think that's the whole one. I found the whole clip, the whole short. If you wanted to watch it, it's really interesting when you've got your like propaganda cap or lens on. I've got several movie lists. So some of them are more internationally focused and some of them are more what you can find in America. There's an IndieWire one. There's a Collider one, which is, I think, the more art house movie type. There's a really great article including movie references, which I found here on Stansberry Forum, which I'm not familiar with, but they had pieces in between that highlight different aspects of fascism and then sort of sort the subcategories of movies. I think that's it. Yeah. So yeah, I've got 3 lists. They have, 10 to 20 each, and you can go through and see if you've watched any of these, and upvote or downvote ones that you would recommend in the chat. Like I said, I haven't watched a lot of movies, and when I do watch them, I'm not always looking at the political ramifications. So the ones I have not yet seen that I do want to watch include Schindler's List. I have seen lots of clips from this because I've been offered up clips on YouTube and on TikTok. And I love Liam Neeson as an actor, but I watched the clips of this movie, and even in like 2 to 5 minute segments, they are so heartrending. It's really hard to watch. So I don't know that I could finish the movie, but I should probably try to watch the whole thing at some point. It's about World War II. It's about Liam Neeson's character, Schindler, who is I think a real life person who tried to save Jews from going to the concentration camps and being killed by having them work for his war munitions factory or whatever. So he was in a bad position and he tried to save lives as much as he could. But it's just the heartrending part is both the inner workings of someone who was trying to do good and not feeling like they'd done enough, as well as just the evil that was present all around. So if you've watched this, what are your feelings about it? Like, I never watched the whole movie through, so I can't speak to the whole thing, just all the little pieces that I've seen of it. There's one called Hope and Fear from 1932, which one of the lists recommended, that is a German movie that was banned, of course, in the run-up to the war and the war of aggression. And that looked really interesting. It was talking about basically this stuff, loneliness and isolation and what drives us to terrible things. Lifeboat in 1944. It's a Alfred Hitchcock film, and it's people who are rescued from a shipwreck, including a Nazi. And that just seems really interesting to me. Like, how do these people relate to each other if they're all in the same boat, literally? So that sounded like a really good one. Handled by masters, Alfred Hitchcock, and I can't remember who the writer was. It was a famous person as well. And then I just put down Harlan County, USA. So great movie recommendations. Let me know if you have some more. Oh, please see Neptune Frost if you get a chance. I was thinking of you the other day in relation to the movie and your climathon. Okay, Neptune Frost. You said you saw this at Dynamite Typewriter? Dynasty Typewriter? I was trying to figure out what that was. So it's a movie, and it's put on by 2 people who are really like eco warriors / actors, directors, and they were really making a point. So I'm curious about this. It's not Frost Nixon, it's Neptune Frost. So that's a good one. I'll write that on my list. Mike says the movie is based on the book Schindler's Ark. Oscar Schindler was not simply a do-gooder, but initially keen on cheap labor, a nuanced story. Okay, so he had to be immersed in it before he had a change of heart. Yeah, that gives it another shine. Yeah, that's interesting. The last clip I watched that really bowled me over was the one where there's a Jewish person who's being forced to go through and dismantle all the watches, jewelry that was being taken from people when they were sent off to the camps. And obviously they're going to sell it. They're going to melt it down. They're whatever, just stealing from people. And after while he's picking through a watch to do something with his like loop and everything at the desk, there's a bunch of like gold teeth that were just spilled on his desk and said, here, melt these down, whatever, do what you will with the gold to transform it. And you're like, oh, those were people that were just murdered. And their teeth were saved for like money. So there's a lot of hard things. So this is why I'm like, maybe reading the book would be easier for me if Mike has that as a recommendation. I don't know. Leslie is laughing. The author and illustrator were talking about a graphic novel at Dynasty Typewriter, but the movie came out years ago. Oh, okay. I didn't get that from the caption. Okay, that's helpful. Neptune Frost. Okay. I have never heard of it, so that's a good recommendation for me. Something different for the kit. What about the graphic novel Mouse? That is a good one. I have not read that. So I've got all the books that I recommend, and then I've looked at it because I've been a bookseller during the years where it, let's say, experienced a resurgence of interest. I think it was a while ago, and then it sort of got a second wind. It's a graphic novel that uses mice as like characters in a fight against the Nazis. And I remember flipping through it and thinking like, this isn't the way it's going to get to me. You know, like I appreciate that it's going to get to more people because it's a animal story or it's a graphic novel and they're trying to appeal to different audiences to bring the understanding. And I just don't know if that's for me. I'm sure it's really good. I've heard really good things about it. I'm doing this graphic nonfiction and it's a chunker and I'm getting lots of tabs in it, things that I don't understand or want to look up more. So yeah, so I'm this on that and I'll put it on my list, but yeah, good suggestion. Yeah, but it's so interesting to watch propaganda movies like Blitz Wolf, which is like Looney Tunes, but for the war effort, and just think like, what do we do that's like that today? I think our landscape of media and media literacy is just so subliminal. I feel like it's really engineered to appeal to parts of us that we don't even know about, you know, and that's why it's, I think, more insidious. Julie says, which film is more heartrending, Schindler's List or Sophie's Choice? Yeah. Did I watch Sophie's Choice? I can't remember if I did. I remember hearing about it for a long time and then obviously getting the reference, but then like, did I watch it or did I watch clips? I don't know. The short format is eating my brain. Yeah, and that's a good question. They're both heartrending choices to make. Yeah. All right. So there's lots of movies both from the World War II period describing actual Nazis and fascists and through the 50s, 60s. There's actually a fair number on those links that I put in that were Japanese anti-fascism movies right after the war. It said that there was like a blossoming of the left that had been suppressed that were making movies about how much they had suffered and how much the imperial domination had really done them a bad turn culturally. And so they were trying to recover from that and, you know, process it. So that there's like German stuff from the 1960s. There's a few things in the 1980s during the Cold War. There's just a really interesting whole smattering in those three lists that I shared. So hopefully you'll check those out and let me know if you've seen any and can recommend. Mike says to Julie, I found Schindler's List tougher, perhaps due to the scale of the horror. As a piece of filmmaking, it's a masterpiece. Yeah. Yeah. Just really took the time to make it impactful, I think, in so many ways. Yeah. So great movies, great recommendations. Let's shift over to our final one, which is about journalists to follow. So these are the ones that I will be touting. So you will appreciate that many of these are more climate focused than fascism focused. But here's my just short spiel on that. So a lot of us in climate activism have the understanding that when you work for climate justice, you are working for all the other isms, right? So racism, sexism, homophobia, all these other things that are insidiously, to use the same word, um, chipping away at our democratic ideals, at the ideals of equality, can be addressed by going after climate justice because, and my view at least, if we don't have a planet anymore to live on for humans, that's really a moot argument. So if we go about trying to save the planet for us, because nature, Earth, Mother Earth is fine without us, but we would like to remain here. If we go about our activism for saving the climate system that will host us in the future, in a way that is inclusive, is concerned with equality, is concerned with justice and freedom, like inclusive climate action is the way to go. Then you're solving all the problems at once in community instead of just trying to silo movements, which doesn't help. So a lot of these journalists are climate journalists, but they have that similar lens of everything is related. You pull a thread in one and it's unraveling a sweater way over there in the corner, right? So I've got lots of these on my list. So this is my list of journalists here. Just show of hands if you've heard of these and if you follow them. And if you don't, maybe sign up for their Substack or go check out their website. ProPublica. Now, this is a place that I get emails from fairly often, and I don't always click on them. I look at the headline and think, okay, is this the place that I'm focusing on to actively root for or bring to attention? And if it's not, sometimes I'll read, sometimes I won't. But overwhelm, right? I think most of the people on this call can sympathize with the fact that you want to follow people who are doing good work. You want to support that work, but you cannot swallow everything. You cannot be on every front. So do things where you can make a difference. So ProPublica, amazing. They do fundraising, but they're also independent. Let me know if you've heard of them and follow them. Kat Abu Ghazala. So she is a journalist who is from the Chicago area who is just running for office and was really vaulted up to general notice because she was going after folks who were not being held accountable. And so that is something we love to see. Vox is one of those media outlets that came up in the 2010s, I guess, when the big networks were sort of disintegrating and laying off workers. Vox does a range of issues. They are pretty even on politics, on science, on international things. Just like great place to follow. If you like Vox, raise your hand. Yeah, I think the black and white with occasional spots of color was very effective. Yeah, lots of art choices that can influence your narrative, for sure. So Vox, I have Grist. So Grist is the one you may not know about. Grist for the mill is the phrase I think that they're referencing. And that is a climate justice publication going after climate policy options. Amy Westervelt, she's a journalist that I follow on Blue Sky. A lot of these are part of my Blue Sky following accounts. Heather Richardson. So I follow Muller, She Wrote, which is Allison Gill and Dana Goldstein. They're a pair that usually do a daily podcast, and it's about the policy changes, the news of the day. And if you're looking for independent media where you can listen to 30 to 40 minutes a day and sort of get your wrap up of the previous day, they're great. The channel is called MSW, Muller, She Wrote, MSW Media. And so I listen to them generally every day, although I do sometimes get behind, and I'm still catching up today for previous April falling behind. Heather Cox Richardson, a lot of people like her and follow her. I can't listen to her as easily because of the way she talks. It makes my skin crawl a little bit because of all the ums and like weird throat things. So you may not have that issue, so you can follow her. Her writing is brilliant. She's got a lot of historian knowledge to bring to bear on current events. So she'll often go off on a tangent, which is tangent after my own heart, where she will explain, well, back in 1865, this is the American decision that influenced this policy. And, in 1913, this, and Woodrow Wilson that. And she just has a lot of knowledge about American history that is like enables her to directly draw lines between the thing that influenced it or instigated it and the thing that is happening now. For example, the Supreme Court decision. Yeah, Mike from South Africa is saying Heather Cox Richardson, an important voice for sure. I just wish she sounded different. Jim is here. Hello, Jim. Welcome. Journalists to follow. Let's continue. George Monbiot. I don't think he does like daily anything, but I've read a couple of his books and essays, and he often treats climate and environmental issues very well. And I'm curious about his background and what else he's done. But he's written a lot of books and essays, so really important. Let's see, Elena Wood. She's a smaller creator that does positive climate news, if you can believe it, along with Western Water Girl. So these are people that I found on TikTok who are independent women who are reporting on things, whether they have partners, paid partnerships, or sponsors or not. And that is a really courageous journey. So not having an employer, but doing the work, doing the labor of love, bringing it to people to raise awareness and highlight the importance of these issues, while also not having a safety net. So cheers. Elena is Alaina, so a little different. Ayanna Elizabeth Johnson is one of the co-authors of All We Can Save, and she's a fabulous person to follow on social media. She's on Instagram, she's on Blue Sky, and the lens that she takes to the book is that all the art, all the creative labor, all of the activism, whatever flavor that you can bring is going to help us move in the right direction. So no act is too small. Every act counts, which I love that. It makes me feel better. It makes me feel a little bit more optimistic. And that was a great book. And her Science and Nature Best of book that she edited was also really good, what she chose. So I'm a big fan. Ayanna Elizabeth Johnson. Now I'm doubting myself. Rachel Donald. Rachel Donald is the host of Planet Critical, which is a very wide-ranging climate activism podcast. She's got her channel here on YouTube, and I think she does an interview about every month with a break a couple times a year. And I found some really insightful people that she interviews. Machado de Oliveira is one of the ones that I found through her, and other people who talk about economics, who talk about minerals, who talk about politics, who talk about organizing, who talk about banking, just things that you wouldn't think can directly relate, but there are ways to act to change them, which is really encouraging. And she's really good with questions. She's done a lot of thinking before she comes to the interview and puts a lot of research of her own into the interview. So Rachel Donald at Planet Critical. Catherine Hayhoe is also someone I follow on Blue Sky. She's in a lot of different climate articles and news, but I don't know as much about her. Hayhoe is Hayhoe, kind of a fun name. And then Carol Cadwalader. So if you're looking for a British journalist who is, I don't know if working without a safety net is true, but someone who is independently trying to hold people to account and doing the digging up of accountability of history, really, really cool stuff to dive into. I think she's the one who is involved in the UCL, the Legacies of Slavery, the person who is giving up something in her family line because it was the right thing to do, sort of this type of really responsive to justice for history. And that's the kind of thing that you could totally ignore. You could totally say, that's done. That's not me. That doesn't affect me. That doesn't have bearing on today. Or you could say, wow, there's injustice in the world today, and it didn't get that way on its own. So how can we act with integrity and intention and be causative, right? Do some critical thinking and share those lessons with others on a learning journey together. So yeah. All right. Other people who have recommendations. Oh, okay. So Mike's got one right off the bat. I subscribe to Rory what's his face on TikTok, but I'm always going by it because he's got these like clickbait headlines that I often don't agree with. And so I subscribed because I thought they had an important view and that I'm sort of like not into what they're actually bringing. So I should probably unsubscribe. I don't know why. It just gets under my skin. Yeah, it could be interesting for sure. He's got a partner that he often talks with, and I don't know who the partner is, the other guy. But yeah, Rory, I can't remember, former politician, former activist in Britain. Worth investigating. If anyone else has opinions on this, let me know in the chat. But yeah, that's a pretty significant list of people I follow, people I get email subscriptions to, people who have Substacks that are really doing a lot of good work in terms of organizing and researching, which I think is really important to know the situation before you boycott, before you call out, before you appeal to politicians or jump in yourself. Oh, okay. Julie's got a good recommendation. Molly Jong Fast. I've seen her in one interview, which may have been with one of these other journalists, or may have been on A Mighty Blaze, because Molly Jong Fast is the daughter of the gal who wrote Fear of Flying, who is a big counterculture author. But that's all I can remember at the moment. So yeah, I should look into that and see if she's got like an ongoing newsletter or podcast. That'd be good. Jim says, I enjoy. The rest is entertainment and the rest is football, which is kind of off topic, but appreciate that, Jim. Mike says, Roy Stewart, thank you. And Alistair Campbell, Tony Blair's communications manager. Okay. Interesting. It's a disagree agreeably concept, looking from left and right. Okay. Interesting. There's a place where that still exists? Wow. I'm shocked. Erica Zhang. Okay. Thank you. Julie got there. Mike got there. Erica Zhang. I wasn't alive when that book came out. So thank you guys. You probably have read it. I have not. But I did hear an interview with either Molly and her mother or just Molly about her mother. Maybe she did like a memoir. Maybe that's what I'm thinking of. But yeah, she seemed pretty interesting. Is this another podcast? Is this like a roundup of new media? What is the rest is entertainment? Okay, now tell me, Jim, Mike, so that I don't feel left out. So we're gonna wrap this up. This is my 3 categories for the starter kit. And you saw some great recommendations from others in the chat as well. They're going into my story graph. They're going on my paper notes, and I'll be looking them up myself. If you're watching this on the replay, feel free to drop comments about your recommendations, books, movies, and journalists. Those are the ones we want to highlight to equip ourselves with some good knowledge and keep on fighting that fight. So thanks for joining today. Thanks for rewatching if that is you later on. It's weird to think as I'm speaking that there's going to be a future time. Time is weird, right? But yeah, so that's what I thought was just important to share based on what was falling into my brain in the past 24 hours. So there we go. No school, no work, no shop if you can manage it today in the US. Thank a worker and, think of things that you can do in this realm to contribute to the solidarity and the equality, justice, and freedom. That's those the ideals that I'm holding up for everyone to hopefully get to at some point or further along the way, at least. What do we got? Jim says Marina Hyde and Richard Osman present The Rest is Entertainment. Richard Osman is someone who's from a game show who wrote murder mysteries. He's had an interesting career switch. And Marina Hyde, I don't know. Thank you, Julie. Glad you enjoyed this. Mike says there's a whole franchise of The Rest is entertainment is about pop culture. Oh, okay. Okay. Marina Hyde is quite left-leaning. Okay. She is a Guardian journalist. Okay. All right. Well, I'll put her on my list. I'll check her out. So I've got a few extra new people and media things to follow up on. This is great. So thank you everyone for your contributions. Feel free to drop comments afterwards, and I hope you feel a little buzz, a little bump of excitement and eagerness to do something to contribute today, as it's May 1st, and maybe all month. Maybe it'll become like a fad, a trend. Who knows? You want to be the change you can see in the world. So there we go. I'll leave you with that. Take care of yourselves and happy reading, everyone. I will see you on Monday for my chat with Ellen's reads about Songs of Trees. Until then, have a great weekend, y'all.